What's up, guys? Toad back again. Uh, Surprised I'm still even alive. I don't even know if I actually am still alive at this point. Getting close to 4 in the morning. We're definitely past 3 in the morning here. Oh my god. I just did my college football video and I don't even know if I was awake during it. I don't even know what I was saying. I do like all the college plays that I threw out there, though. We got NFL week 7, and this is crazy because this is one of the weeks that's like stacked the most with buys. So you would think that I wouldn't be on as many games, but I'm actually on more games than I typically am. I can't help myself. I don't even know what I'm doing. Last week I was only on 2. I went 1-1. Of course, the Colts. I still think that handicap was actually right. Indy, they had already lost to Jacksonville in their own stadium as like a 3.5 point underdog or whatever. And then Jacksonville was only laying 4 at home against them. So that, to me, looked like a trap. I mean, you can see my analysis from last week on that. And Jacksonville was coming back from those back-to-back games in London, including beating the Bills, which was a huge win. They had already beaten Indy, even though they were still in a battle for the division, and they kind of still are. But the Colts outplayed Jacksonville in that game, man. Statistically, they outgained them by 120-something yards or something. Minshew had like 300-something yards through the air, but the Colts weren't able to do anything on the ground. And part of it, I think, was that they fell behind, so they had to abandon the run, even though they have Jonathan Taylor back, and he's one of their best offensive weapons. It was just a mess, and the tail of the game really was the Gardner Minshew turnovers. He had 3 interceptions. That just really is what turned the game. One was in the red zone in like a crucial spot late in the game. Maybe if you don't even have that one particular turnover, you wind up getting the cover out of Indy in that game. But the turnovers really did them in. Jacksonville did not really have much offense in that game, didn't really play that well, and somehow still were able to wind up winning and covering that game, unfortunately for me. And I liked the Minshew aspect of the handicap as well. The fact that I think it was his first start going up against Jacksonville after they got rid of him, as he was their starter until they drafted Trevor Lawrence. I think this might have been the first time he was starting against the team that got rid of him. So I thought that would motivate him a bit. But he just made way too many mistakes in the game. That sucked. The Browns, even though I got a bad number on it at the 7, and I was kind of surprised that it went up to 10. I think just because they decided on P.J. Walker. I think the 7 already was factoring in the fact that Watson was not going to play. I think we already knew that Watson was not going to play. Surprised that it went up further with Walker being announced as starter. I thought that was, if anything, better for Cleveland than having Thompson Robinson in there, the rookie who was making a lot of mistakes when they first put him out there. Walker with the more experience, at least. And San Francisco did, of course, lose Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel in that game, so they lost 2 of their big offensive weapons and took those away. But even so, it was like a close defensive struggle. Cleveland definitely played defense well enough to win that game. I'm going to talk about Cleveland in a minute, by the way, and Indy. Oh boy, what am I going to be talking about? Which way am I going in that? If you know the way that I think and the way that I handicap games, you probably already know. But Cleveland's defense was good enough to cover in that game. I think regardless, that's what happened. They wound up winning the game outright, which is crazy. And Jim Schwartz, I think, is like 9-1 lifetime against Kyle Shanahan now. He just has Shanahan's number, man. He's the defensive coordinator for Cleveland. Shanahan, of course, the coach for San Francisco. Schwartz just knows how to game plan against Shanahan's offenses, man. I don't know what else to tell you about that, but that came into play again. P.J. Walker almost threw away the game. There was a spot in the fourth quarter where Cleveland had the lead, and it looked like they had this big play to get towards like midfield, and looked like they were really ready to put the game away, and it got called back on an ineligible receiver downfield. And I think I talked about this in one of my daily videos, but I'm just rehashing it in case you didn't watch that video. Then on the next play, they had gotten backed up because of that penalty, and then Walker threw a pick, I think, that got returned inside Cleveland's own 10. So he threw a pick like in his own end, and then it got returned so that San Francisco just started a drive in the red zone. They got a touchdown off of it. That seemed like it was going to completely flip the momentum, flip the game. I was not happy about it. San Francisco took the lead on that. All of a sudden, they're winning. But then Cleveland was somehow able to get that field goal like at the end of the game, man. And Walker almost threw the game away. He made this really dangerous pass into traffic into the end zone when he should have just gone down with it or done something like that. He could have gone down with it, and they could have run most of the rest of the time off the clock and kicked the game-winning field goal. Instead, he stopped the clock and almost threw a pick again. Really not a good decision, but he didn't throw the pick, at least. They were able to keep possession of it, get the field goal, and then they still had to stop San Francisco. And I think they committed a penalty on, like, third down that allowed San Francisco to prolong their drive without their major two offensive weapons there. So that was crazy. That was not good. The penalty on Cleveland there, even though I think it was the correct call. I think it was like a pass interference or something. I don't even remember. San Francisco got into field goal range, and they missed the field goal at the end. A makeable but long field goal, I think in the 40-something yard range at the end. I was celebrating just crazy. I mean, with the Cleveland money line cash, I was able to win on the day, despite going 1-1, usually being a loss because you have to pay the VIG. But because of the money line cash, that put it over the top for like a slight win. So that was good. At least Cleveland was able to cash that money line ticket and push it over the top for that money line, for that overall win, despite being 1-1. So there you go. Let's talk about this week's games. And right away, I usually talk about the Thursday night games, but I'm going to be on the Thursday night game tomorrow. And this is the New Orleans Saints against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm laying -1 with the Saints. Looks like they were an underdog at one point, and they flipped the favorite, and they're going towards 1.5, which doesn't really make a difference between 1.5, whatever. Even though up here it looks like the Jaguars have 53% of the tickets and 64% of the cash. I'm not sure that's accurate because there is something driving the Saints number up a little bit there. So I do think that they're, in actuality, is some of the more respected money on the Saints there. And if we look at what's going on here, I think the situation kind of tells you that this is a good spot for the Saints here and not as much of a good spot for Jacksonville because what did Jacksonville do? Well, I talked about it last week when I went against them. They were coming off 2 games in a row in London. Of course, this makes it look like they were home games, and that kind of screws over Jacksonville in a way because those both count as home games. They were both in London, even though they're kind of the semi-home London team or whatever you want to say. That kind of screws them because they have to play 2 of their home games actually in London and not in their own stadium. Although I don't think their home field is that great an advantage anyway, but whatever. So they played those 2 games in London, beat the Bills, which was a huge win, came back home, and then beating the Colts was a big win. And they didn't play particularly well in that game, but they wound up beating the Colts. That gives them the 1-game edge over the Colts in the division, but it also gives them the tiebreaker now because they beat the Colts both games already. That was a big win, man. They swept the season series. That's it. And now when you come back home and you're at least, well, I don't want to say you're cooking, but you win that game at home, you don't really want to go on the road. And now not only are they coming off like a game that's a pretty big win that puts them in the driver's seat in the division, like really heavily, because you could say they have a 2-game lead in the division because they swept the season series. So that tiebreaker's over, done with. They have the tiebreaker. You're doing that. You're playing well. You're at home. The last thing you want to do is now have to go on the road on a short week to the New Orleans Saints. That's not what you want to do, and it's a road out-of-conference game, and that's the game that means the least on a team's schedule is the road out-of-conference games. It's like the lowest thing on the tiebreaker. It doesn't matter as much. So it's possible that the Jaguars are maybe not going to be totally paying attention in this game. And Trevor Lawrence, it looks like he's supposed to play. I think the line is indicating that he is going to be playing. He got banged up in that game against the Colts, so I don't know if we're going to see him at 100%. I don't know. And on the Saints side of things, I don't think this is why I don't think that ticket money percentage count that we see there is really that accurate, because I don't see why recreational bettors would want anything to do with the Saints here. Like, the Jaguars look good. I think the Jaguars seemingly would be the more public team in a game like this. You got the Saints coming off, yeah, they crushed the Patriots, but then everybody saw the Patriots have just been playing awful against everybody, really. So I don't know if anybody puts any stock into that. Then last week, the Saints went to Houston and lost, and that was a situation where they were coming off a blowout win, the Saints were, and then they had to face the Texans, who were coming off kind of an ugly loss in a game that I won money on that was against the Atlanta Falcons. So it was kind of that type of spot where one team was coming off a good game, one team was coming off a bad game, and then you see it kind of like flips, like the narrative kind of flips in that next game where everything kind of regresses back to the mean, and that's what we saw there. The Saints lost in Houston. But now it's the Saints. They get to come back home on a short week. That's not much of a travel there. Houston, very close to New Orleans, whatever. They come back home. I think they're going to be better prepared, in a better spot here on the short week. Jaguars aren't really used to playing in the Superdome, aren't really used to playing at New Orleans. It's kind of an unfamiliar stadium for them to be playing in on a short week. That's kind of a difficult spot for the Jaguars, not even factoring in the fact that Lawrence is shaken up a little bit, and they're coming off a couple of huge wins, back-to-back wins. So I think this is a much better spot for New Orleans to bounce back after a bad loss, an ugly loss, basically, and the Jaguars coming off these big wins and being in the driver's seat in their division. This game doesn't mean as much, even though it is going to be on prime time. I like the Saints. I think the situation dictates that this should be a play on the Saints. I don't know what we're seeing really with what we see with the market percentages there, but I'm not sure if I buy into what I'm seeing there. It looks like the number is moving towards the Saints. Don't really know what else to say there. I think the number is probably about where it is. The look ahead was about the same as where it is now, so I think the assumption is that Lawrence is going to be playing. And the other thing about this line is it almost looks too easy to take the Jaguars, because you have a team that people know is a team that was in the playoffs last year. They're above 500. They just saw them beat the Bills and the Colts. The perception is definitely that the Jaguars are the much better team over the Saints, and the Saints really haven't done much. They've looked ugly last year and into this year. This year, I don't think people are going to really think they've done much. Like, none of these wins are very impressive. 1-point win over the Titans, close win over the Panthers, and then beating the Patriots. Nobody's really going to care. So people, I think, are just going to not pay much attention to the Saints at all. And this line is, of course, telling you the Jaguars are the better team, because the Saints are only a 1-point favorite at home, where they probably get about 3 at the Superdome, which is one of the better home field advantages in the NFL. But people, I think the recreational bettors are going to look at that number and think, that it's so easy to just play the Jaguars here in a game that's basically just like pick the winner. We know the Jaguars are the better team. You're just taking them to have to win the game, basically. They're even like getting a point or a point and a half. So that's the other thing here. The other factor, like, it almost looks like a trap as well. It just looks too easy to take the Jaguars here. The kind of obviously better team here. It's like, why is the number where it is? Whatever. It looks too easy to take Jacksonville. When it looks too easy, it usually is, so I'm not buying that aspect of it either. Everything I just said, the situation dictates that the play should be on the New Orleans Saints. So I like the Saints, -1. Next up, Indianapolis, +2.5. And I think there have been some threes out there, like, very briefly, but it looks like as soon as the 3 crops up, it looks like professionals are coming in and just grabbing the 3. So I don't know if it's going to be possible to get the 3, but I still like this situation for the Colts. You can get +2, 2.5 right now, I think, fairly easily. And it's possible that you might find a 3 somewhere on this. I just think everything's gone too far with the Browns all of a sudden. People just overreact to what they see week to week, really. And you can see here 75% of the tickets, but 72% of the cash on the Browns. Looks like the Browns are the public team getting the public action here, but less of the money than the tickets. And as I said, I think it's known that professionals are coming in and betting the +3. So some of the bigger bets, the professional bets, are coming in on the Colts at the 3. But I still like the side for the Colts at 2.5. And what do we have here? I was on both of these teams last week, of course, and mostly this is a play against the Cleveland Browns. basically we're playing against the fact that the Browns, they had like a historic win, basically. I don't know if I'm exaggerating that slightly, but a monster upset of the 49ers. The 49ers are seen as like the best team in the league, undefeated. They come in, and the Browns are coming off a really ugly loss. And part of the reason why I like them is they were coming out of a bye. People didn't expect anything from the Browns. The Browns had their backup quarterback in there, and P.J. Walker. And yes, the 49ers did have a couple injuries there. But what did the Browns do? They won. They beat the 49ers. And I think you could say that the injuries did play enough of a factor that can take a little bit of something away from that win. Like maybe that win isn't all that it looks like it was because the 49ers were without some of their key offensive players late in the game, which definitely did help the Browns get the outright win there. So maybe there's a little bit less that you can take away from that win than you otherwise would with the Browns. The Browns are coming off that monster win, and now they have, after playing at home in that win, now they have to go on the road, which also you don't really want to do. When you have a good game at home, you don't really want to disrupt what's going on there and have to go on the road. And what do they get? They get the Colts, who, even though I thought they were in a good situation last week, the Colts lost to the Jaguars, even though that is a big game that the Colts are coming off of, a game basically for the division. That's still kind of like an ugly loss with the way they lost it, a bunch of interceptions. I think this could be a spot where the Colts are going to bounce back, and they're going to know what the Browns did last week. Of course, they're at home. They're going to see what the Browns did. I don't think that there's reason for the Colts to show up like unfocused or unmotivated here for this game. And yes, the Browns do have a good defense, and I think they have the better of the two defenses. But in this case, the Browns are laying points on the road, and I think we've gone a little bit too far there. So I think there's not really a reason for the Colts to be unfocused here after they had kind of that ugly loss, even though it was in a game that was a big game for them. And I don't think it's like a dream crusher scenario or anything like that for the Colts, even though that really hurts their prospects for the division. They're still playing. They could still potentially win the division, but they're also still going to be playing to try to get into the playoffs. So there's no like dream crusher factor here or anything like that, I wouldn't say. But the Browns, going back to what the number is here, the Browns being -2.5 or even possibly -3 on the road, like I think we got to take a step back here, man. Like last week, I don't think that the line was that high. I do have the, let me see, because I do have the look ahead here. I think that, no, actually it does look like it was around the same, but that's just bizarre to me. Like maybe it's just the way that the Colts have been playing versus how the Browns have been playing this year. I just don't see. I don't get how the Browns, like this line is saying at Indy, if the Browns are like a 2.5 point favorite, that's basically saying that they are like almost like they're like 4.5 maybe, or maybe even more, 5 on a neutral. And that the Browns would be like upwards of like 7.5 at home against the Colts. I think we've gone too far. Just with recency bias here and what we've seen out of these teams recently, I'm not buying it. I think these teams are a lot closer than the line is telling you that they are. I think this should be closer to like a pick 'em really here. The Browns are like the slightly better team, I would say, because they do have the better defense, but you got to take a step back here, man. And I think some of what's going into this line is that Gardner Minshew is starting as well. I think the Colts get more, like the Colts are seen as like a couple of points better when they have Richardson starting, but even though Richardson is the less experienced quarterback, I don't think there's that much of a drop-off between Richardson and Minshew, even though Minshew made way too many mistakes last week. He's got a lot of NFL starts under his belt. He's a pretty experienced starter, so I really don't think that that the Browns are that much better than the Colts are, even with Minshew starting. I think we've gone a bit too far with this number, man. And this number also seems to be indicating that we might be thinking that Deshaun Watson is coming back, because I doubt that the number would be where it is here if it's P.J. Walker starting. But either way, if Watson comes back, I think that and it's possible that if Watson comes back, you see the line go up a little bit. So maybe wait if you like the Colts, and I didn't wait. Maybe I should have. Maybe you could wait, and maybe you could get like a 3, or maybe even, I don't know if it would really go above 3 if it's announced that Watson is playing or not. But if Watson is playing, I still like the Colts side, because I think if Watson is playing, you're just getting more of that benefit in the number, because it's just going to affect the number. If it's not already affecting the number here, if we're not already assuming that Watson is playing based on this number, you get that, it's that reverse injured player theory. You have that starting player come back. You just had a big win without him. So you are a team that you know that you can like beat like the best team in the NFL now, like without him. So you kind of, there's like that factor where you get a little bit complacent. And then when that quarterback comes back, you have to get used to him being back there again. And you're thinking, well, we won without him, so we can win with him too. So that complacency factor kind of comes into play. So all of that, if Watson is playing, I still like the Colts here. Obviously just get the best number that you can, I would say. But I'm on it at 2.5. I like the Colts. I like the side for all the reasons that I stated. It's primarily a fade of the Browns coming off of that huge win. And this is going to be a long video, my longest NFL video. I have 4 plays this week, which is crazy. Next up is the Washington Redskins. I'm going to keep calling them the Redskins, baby. They should be the Redskins. Football team is a hilarious name, at least. I like both of those names better than the stupid Commanders, which is way too militaristic. I don't like it at all. The football team is at least hilarious, because it's like, what's the most inoffensive name that we can find? We can't think of any name that won't offend anyone. How about the football team? So at least that is a hilarious name. But yeah, the Washington Commanders, the Redskins, this is another fade of the spot that the team's opponent is in. And as you can see here, I don't know about this market, these percentages here, man. I don't know how much we can put into these numbers, especially early on, where it's saying 57% of the tickets, but 52% of the cash on Washington. But you can see here that the number's gone up on Washington from -1 to -2.5, and it looks like it's almost going towards 3. I got in on it at Washington 1.5, and I think it's 2.5 now, and headed towards 3. I would say you got to lay that number before it gets to 3, man, or else you might have to look Washington money line, maybe. If you can get like a decent money line price that's like around -150 or maybe less than -150, that's the way that I would look, because I think this is indicating that there are like the bigger bets, the more professional bets, the more respected money and respected bets are coming in on Washington here. And I think I'm about to just talk to you about the situation, because I think I know why that is the case. I think that is the case. And yeah, the number's shooting up. So yeah, try to get like the best number that you can. Again, I'm glad I took the 1.5 yesterday, because it looks like you might not be able to find the 1.5 anywhere. I think it's good up to 2.5 on this one. And what's the situation that I'm talking about here? Well, I think everybody kind of knows. What did we see out of the Giants? We just saw them play on, what was it, the Sunday night game, I believe. They played a huge primetime game. And that was, the Giants had just looked like a complete disaster all season, basically. Nobody was putting any stock into the Giants. They were like up to a 15 and a half point underdog against the Bills, one of the best teams in the NFL, really. Nobody was expecting anything from the Giants. And what happened in this game? The Giants showed up, and somehow, man, their defense was able to hold the Bills like very much in check. And the Giants really probably should have won this game. And what happened here was the Giants were winning, and they blanked Buffalo into the fourth quarter. They held Buffalo, a team with a good offense, completely scoreless, which is crazy, up into the fourth quarter, where the Giants finally wound up succumbing. But really, the Giants made a couple of bad decisions, and they could have won the game. And most notably, everybody knows what happened at the end of the first half. The Giants were up 6-0, and they were down at Buffalo's goal line. And what happened was, I think Daboll and Tyrod Taylor are both at fault. So Daniel Jones was not playing in this game, which makes it even crazier. The Giants, even though the Giants had like no offense in this game, Saquon Barkley was back. It was his first game back, so he was still trying to get like worked into the mix too, and he didn't really do much earlier in the game. But the Giants had basically like no offense in this game. Tyrod Taylor and Daboll, what did they do at the end of the first half? Daboll, they're at the goal line. They really only had time for like one play. So really what you have to just kick the field goal there, man. You have to kick the field goal, go up 9-0. That's what you have to do. Don't risk it. Even though I understand, like, yeah, you're at the goal line. If you punch it in, you're saying, we're here to play, Buffalo. And if you actually get it, you're up 13-0. Or if you go for 2, possibly even 14-0, and you're really putting them on the ropes. But I think you gotta, like, just take the 2-score lead there, man. You're the Giants. Your offense sucks. Dayball apparently called some sort of like option play that allowed Tyrod Taylor to audible between a couple of different plays, I guess. And what did he do? It looked like it was originally going to be a passing play, which I think they were going to take one shot at the end zone, and they might have had time to take that one shot and still have time left to kick the field goal after that, I think. But he, for some reason, audible to a run play. They ran Barkley. He got stuffed, and they didn't have any timeouts left, and the clock ran out, and they didn't score any points out of that drive at all. And it looked like Dayball was really mad at Tyrod Taylor. It was just they're both at fault, man. It was bad play calling, bad calling by Taylor at the line of scrimmage. Never should have audibled. Bad game management, terrible game management. None of that should have happened, and it wound up really mattering because towards the end of the game, the Giants were still winning with a few minutes, they were back ahead with a few minutes left in the game. And then they gave up the touchdown, and then the Giants had one more chance at it late. And had they gotten that field goal towards the end of the second quarter, they would have been down 14-12 instead of 14-9. So instead of needing a touchdown, they would have only needed a field goal, and they got into field goal range at the end. They would have had quite makeable field goal. I think they were maybe in the red zone at the end of the game by the end of it. They could have made that field goal, which would have been to win the game 15-14 if they had just kicked that field goal at the end of the first half. That is just brutal. They took a couple shots at the end zone to Tyrod Taylor again, not able to do it, and they lost the game. That was, if you're the Giants, I don't know how you turn around right after a game like that. You're on a little bit of a short week because that was a Sunday night game, so you have a little bit less of turnaround time here as well. That was a big primetime game, a game you really got up for. It was a max effort, wire to wire, as a huge underdog, and you had the Bills like kind of on the ropes for a lot of that game. You almost were able to win that game, and down to the last play, there was still the possibility you could win that game. I don't know how the Giants get back up off the mat after this. It's going to be really difficult for them to do that, and they got Washington coming in. Washington does play the Eagles next, which you could say maybe that's a little bit of a look ahead because they do have that big game against the Eagles next. But I don't know that Washington would be like unfocused in a game like this because they're only a 500 team right now. They dropped 3 straight games before they came in and kind of returned to form a little bit last week and were able to beat the Falcons. And it is a second straight road game with the Eagles up next. So those are kind of negatives for Washington, but I think it's just too much of a negative on the Giants. And like I said, I do think there is market agreement with me. I think the professionals, there is confirmation that I have there that the professionals are on the Washington side here with me. So I do like that. I think that it is because the Giants are in such a terrible situation after the way that Bills game played out. Washington, you could say that win might be like more of like a momentum starter, if anything, because that broke that bad momentum that they had where they lost those 3 games in a row. And, of course, the 2 games they lost were against the Bills and the Eagles, 2 like really good teams, really. In that Eagles game, they took them into overtime, and that was why I was against Washington in the next game. They had an overtime game against the Eagles, a really big game, and then after that, they had quick turnaround time and had to play the Bears on Thursday, coming off that huge win with little time to prepare. So I was on the Bears in that one for that reason, and that worked out well, won that game, but that explains why Washington is. You can kind of explain all 3 of their losses. Not that I think Washington is that good, but 2 of their losses were to good teams, and then the Bears' loss was in a really bad spot for them. So kind of they returned to form. They were able to get that win against the Falcons, and it's possible that is like a momentum starter. I think the Giants are in the much, much worse spot here. As long as you're like laying a price that's really for Washington to just win the game, I like it. I like Washington. Minus 1.5 is what I got it at. I think -2 or even up to 2.5 is fine. And then the final play, you already see it up on my screen there. Switch to the wrong tab. Green Bay -1. I like this one as well. And this one, I think also, I'm on a lot of plays, man, for how few games there are this week and how many buys there are this week. But it's just crazy. I like this. I like going against the Broncos, at least in this spot. But you can see here, it looks like 58% of the tickets are on the Packers, but 64% of the money on the Broncos. Again, I question like the numbers that I'm looking at. Maybe I should stop using pregame, even though by the time the game kicks off, like that, the late like money movement tends to be like a pretty good indicator on this site. So I do like that. Maybe earlier in the week, it's less. That tends to be less the case. Although I don't know, more often than not, it tends to be a nice indicator. But here you can see the Packers have gone up from -1 to -1, juiced at -120. It looks like they're headed to like 1.5 potentially even. So that tells me that it's possible that 64% of the money either isn't really on the Packers or like some of the just the few like most respected bets and biggest bets are kind of driving that number on the Packers. But all that kind of aside, even though I do put quite a bit of weight into the market read in these situations. I do put a lot of weight into the market read, I should say, but I do put a lot of weight into specific situational angles as well. And this is a weird situation for the Broncos, and I think this is a bad situation. Even though you might say, "Hey, well, the Broncos have a little bit of extra time off because they played last Thursday." Yeah, but as I'll talk about in a minute, the Packers have even more time off because they had a bye last week. So. As much extra rest as the Broncos might have, the Packers have even more. So I don't think that that's helpful to Denver relatively. But what is the spot that Denver's in here? They had a primetime game that everybody saw against the Chiefs, and the Broncos, that vaunted Broncos defense that's actually been terrible pretty much all year, finally did something against the Chiefs, and the Broncos are actually within one score late in that game. I think with like a few minutes left in the game, it was 16-8, and then the Chiefs kicked a field goal in the final like few minutes to kind of unnecessarily cover the spread, which I didn't like because I had the Broncos in my pick'em pools at +10.5. But the Broncos played the Chiefs tough. The Chiefs are still the class of their division, of course. That's a big game for the Broncos. It was prime time. They pretty much put in a wire-to-wire effort there. And after that, like, you come home, but are you really going to be that focused on a Packers team that hasn't really looked very good this year, hasn't really done much? And not only that, but the Broncos have the Chiefs again up next. So this is a Kansas City sandwich that the Broncos are in. A nice Kansas City barbecue sandwich there. It seems pretty delicious to me, man. But you don't usually get a situation like this. It's kind of rare where you have a team that has to play 2 games against like the best team in their division with only 1 game in between the two. And that's the situation the Broncos are in here. They're in a Kansas City sandwich, the very rare slathered in barbecue sauce or maybe dry rub because it's Kansas City. I don't even know. Nice Kansas City pulled pork sandwich here, baby. We're going with it. It's a nice, tasty treat. Tasty, meaty sandwich. And what do we have for the Packers on the other side of things? Well, I think they're in a much better spot because they're coming out of a bye, so they have that extra time to prepare for the Broncos. Even though they do have a divisional game against the Vikings up next, the Vikings have not really shown much at all, haven't really done much of anything. And this is not a spot where like you can really be unfocused in any way because you're 2-3, you're struggling, and you went into the bye struggling. Last we saw, Green Bay looked really bad. 2 primetime games in a row, actually. They got housed by the Lions in a Thursday night game, and then they played Monday night against the Raiders and lost that game too. And the Packers certainly had chances to win that game. I talked about that game. I thought the Packers are actually in the somewhat better spot in that game, and they definitely had chances to win it. But if you're a team that you have those 2 ugly losses on prime time, it's going to make like the recreational bettors think very little of you and maybe affect the line a little bit. That might mean that you're going to get value on that team because they looked really bad in back-to-back primetime games. But not only that, but they went into the bye on like a really sour note. And when that happens, the bye tends to help you. Like if you go into the bye and you're on like a winning streak, the bye can like kind of stop that momentum and cool you off, which isn't good. But if you go into the bye on some ugly losses, on like a loss streak like this, an ugly note, you can use the bye to like recalibrate, refocus, and it tends to be much more of a positive. And I think that's the case here, and that's what you're going to see here. So I think Green Bay is in the much better spot. The Broncos have this game surrounded by tough games against the Chiefs. They just came off that primetime game against the Chiefs. Green Bay has not looked good at all, and they're coming. They got the extra time to prepare there. I like it. I like Green Bay for all those reasons, and that's going to be the last of the 4 plays here. So to recap those plays quickly, and this is turning into maybe even longer than my college football video. It's going to compete for my longest video, my 2 longest videos, staying up past 4 a.m., man, for 2 40-minute videos, both college and pro. This is wild, man. 8 total plays, and hopefully we do well in these this week. But New Orleans -1 is the first play. That's in the Thursday night game tomorrow night. Indianapolis Colts on Sunday afternoon, +2.5. Washington on Sunday afternoon, -1.5. And Green Bay in the later slate on Sunday afternoon, -1. Those are the 4 plays. Hopefully we do well with these, and I don't know if there's anything else that we have. I can talk about the other primetime games quickly, I guess. I don't know if there are any other like leans that I would have in any of these games. I don't know. I think the Lions are a very public underdog here. I would look to go against the Lions, I would say for sure. They got 74% of the tickets, but only 69% of the money, and they're the underdog at Baltimore. And Baltimore looks like they've gone up from 2.5 to 3. I don't even know what Baltimore did did they have a bye last week and they lost to the Steelers the week before that? I think that might be the case with Baltimore. So people are going to look at this, and the Lions just look really hot right now. Everybody likes the Lions. They like that offense. The Ravens have looked kind of ugly, and I'm pretty sure their last game was that loss to the Steelers, which didn't look good. But really, the Ravens outplayed them and probably should have won that game. But I think if that's the case, and the Ravens did have a bye last week, maybe I'm talking myself into a bet on the Ravens too. I don't think I'm actually going to do it, but I think it's a fairly strong lean for the Ravens here if that is the case. Oh, no, they played the Titans in NFL Europe last week. Never mind. So scratch that. Yeah, that's right. So the Ravens did win. All right, so it's not as strong a play as I thought for Baltimore there. But I still like the Ravens there, even though they are coming back from NFL Europe. They had a good game against the Titans out there. So they do have that travel. Say what you will about that, I guess. But teams tend to not do that badly. They tend to be, as I mentioned in one of those situations, I think it was when Atlanta came back from London a couple weeks ago. I mentioned that teams tend to actually be kind of undervalued when they come back from London. So I think that's going to be the case here, man. The Lions are 5-1. People really liking the Lions. They're at the top of that division there. And people are going to say, hey, the Ravens are having to travel back from London, so they're in a bad spot here. So the public's just all over the Lions here, and it looks like there's some reverse line movement on the Ravens here. I think the Ravens are a decent play there. I do like the Ravens there. The Lions, I think, have some breathing room in their division too, and this is one of those out of conference road games, man. One of the ones that means less than any other game on your slate. So all of that, it looks like, the Ravens would be the way that I would look there, would be the side there for sure. And this line is basically just saying that the teams are even, and it's just home field. And I'm not 100% sure that I wouldn't say that the Ravens are the slightly better team than the Lions, despite looking at their records. And that's the other thing. People are going to look at their records and say, hey, the Lions are 5-1. The Ravens are, I don't know, somewhere around 500 or whatever, and think, how are the Ravens favored here? Like, we got to take the points with the Lions, right? There's got to be value there. Whenever that's the case, I tend to look the other way there. So, yeah, I think the Ravens are fairly strong there. I like the Ravens in that one. And what else we got here? I'll just talk about the primetime games quickly here. The Dolphins-Eagles. You got the Eagles look like they've gone up a little bit from in the Sunday night game from -2 to -2.5, and it looks like 68% of the tickets are on Miami because everybody really likes that hot Miami offense. Everybody loves the best offense is the Miami offense that can just score a ton, but 50% of the money looks like it's on the Eagles, and it looks like there is reverse line movement there, kind of on the Eagles, driving it up slightly there. So the Eagles, even though they do tend to be a public team as well, people do like the Eagles. I think the people may have kind of soured on the Eagles a little bit because of what they just saw last week. The Eagles just suffered their first loss at New York against the Jets, but that was a spot where it wasn't a very good spot for the Eagles. They were a big favorite on the road, had to play a good defense in the Jets. It was a road out of conference game that maybe the Eagles just weren't really paying much attention to. They had this Sunday night game coming up, even though it's also against a non-conference team. It's a home game in prime time, so it is certainly a bigger game, and it's against one of the best offenses in football, the Dolphins. So I think people are going to see that the Eagles offense has kind of been struggling a bit this year under their new offensive coordinator, CEO away. They just had a really ugly game against the Jets is what people saw last. That's not good. People are going to like what they've seen out of the Dolphins, but I mean, what can you say about the Dolphins, really? The last two games, they put up a ton of points, but it was against the Giants and Carolina, not two defensive juggernauts really there. So I don't know how much weight you can put into the Dolphins scoring a ton on those two teams. And we saw the Dolphins, of course, they famously put up that 70 spot against Denver. Denver's defense has been awful pretty much all year, so I don't know how much stock you can put into that one either. Dolphins have been beating up on some of the worst teams in the NFL, basically, is what you can glean from those things. And then when they've stepped up and they played like that game against Buffalo, where I had a play on Buffalo on this show, because the Dolphins are coming off that 70 spot and just looked too good. And I was like, you got to slow it down a little bit on the Dolphins, man. They're still not better than the Bills. And the Bills took them to task, man. The Bills easily beat the Dolphins. So it's still, when the Dolphins step up in class, they haven't shown me anything that convinces me that they're able to like really like beat these teams that are the best teams in the NFL here. So I haven't seen it yet out of the Dolphins, and they've struggled against some other teams this year too, like the Patriots. Back when the Patriots were still like playing better defense towards the beginning of the year, that they held the Dolphins in check as well. So I like the Eagles. I would only look the Eagles' way in this game. The Dolphins are just coming off all these high-scoring games, but again, they're just beating up on these bad teams. Eagles didn't look good in that loss to the Jets. People are going to think that's an ugly game and want to shy away from the Eagles because they like those high-scoring offenses better. I would only lean to the Eagles here until the Dolphins show me that they can actually beat like these best teams in the NFL. I think that they're a little bit of a step down from those best teams in the NFL. So that's the only way I would look on the Sunday night game would be to the Eagles. And then the Monday night game, I don't even know what to think about this. You got 49ers at the Vikings. 49ers look like they've gone down from 7.5 to 6.5, even though it looks like they have 85% of the tickets, but 89% of the cash. I mean, I think it's obvious the 49ers are going to be the public team, of course. They're a one-loss team. People still consider them to be like maybe the best team in the NFL. Maybe they are. Probably they indeed are. And the Vikings have just really struggled this year, haven't looked good. So people are not really going to want anything to do with the Vikings here. There are a lot of question marks, though, because the 49ers have those injuries that I talked about from the Browns game, Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, huge injuries there. It seems like they're both questionable or maybe better than questionable. It looks like it's likely that they might both wind up playing in this game. And the line maybe seems to indicate that they probably are because it's a pretty high line there. I don't know. You might want to wait on this one if you want to play this game at all. I don't know which way I would even lean in this one, really, but looks like those guys may return for the Niners, so they may be back. Vikings, I believe, are without Justin Jefferson now, their best offensive weapon. I don't know for how long that will be, and I don't know how many points he is as far as like how much it factors into the line. A very, very talented wide receiver who's really like huge in the team's offense. I think he might even be worth like a couple of points. Like it's the rare case where like a non-quarterback might actually affect the line like a couple of points. So that hurts the Vikings a little bit, but just blindly not knowing anything else here, I would say because the Niners are still going to be like the public team and seen as like the better team, I think there would only be value to be had on the Vikings if there's any value anywhere, and they are a fairly sizable home underdog. So that would be the only way that I would look Monday night, but it's not strong. Anyway, that's going to do it. It's been a couple of really long videos for me tonight. I can't believe that I am not dead yet, even though I am better off dead. Can't believe that I'm still even functioning at all. I've had some coffee, as I do. I just drink coffee constantly, 24/7, baby, just fueling the corpse, fueling the useless husk that is my body. I'm Tower Gang Toad. You can follow me on Twitter at Tower Gang Toad. Find me on the Tower Gang Podcast, which is the most offensive podcast in the history of humanity. We are on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Spotify. We have a locals where you can support us, towergang.locals.com if you want to throw us some money. And that's going to do it. I'm better off dead, and I need to be dead right now, man. And I even have to work, and I have to get up in a couple hours and work. This is all work as well. I am a professional. I am a jack of all trades. I am a pro at many things. Toad, better off dead. Peace out.